Hey everyone, hope you're doing well. We'll get started here in just about a couple minutes. Just wanted to get on, check the live stream, make sure everything is working, which it looks like it's working good for me. And let you know we've got a couple questions cycling around. Let us know where you're watching from, one. And then two, let us know, do you currently use in-ears? So I play with sticks. I'm assuming they're a drummer or a very violent keyboard player. They say they're watching from Sacramento. Conrad is watching from Greenwood, Indiana. I know where Greenwood is. And he's using a couple different, yes, drummer. Yeah. Aiden is here. Good to see you guys. So I'll be back in just a moment. I want to give everyone about another minute or so just to join the live stream. We had, I think, 120 something people register for this, which is awesome. So I'm going to come on. I'm going to talk about choosing the right in-ears. So it's going to be a lot of fun. Let's give it about a minute, though, for everyone else to show up and let me know where you're watching from and if you currently use in-ears. All right, I'll be right back. See you guys in just a second. All right. Hey, everyone. Again, I'll give us about 30 more seconds for everyone just to get on the live stream and get settled. Looks like everyone's kind of settling in. Again, as you see cycling through on the slides before, let us know in the chat where you're watching from and if you currently use in-ears. Looks like everything's working on my end. Looks like you guys are. Don't hear any complaints. So it looks like we're good. So again, let's give it about another 20 or 30 seconds here, then we'll get started. I will be right back. Thanks for joining us, guys. See you in a second. All right, here we go. So I think it's time to officially start. What do you guys say? Thank you guys so much for joining me. This is going to be a lot of fun. Thanks to Audiologist for sponsoring this. One thing I love about Audiologist, and I know they really truly mean this, no matter what kind of in-ears you use or are considering, Audiologist wants you to be a part of this webinar and be a part of it. It's not meant to just be a sales pitch for Audiologist. Now it works that I am conveniently wearing my brand new Audiologist in-ears that I just got, but I'm going to talk about things that apply no matter what type of in-ears you're using. So as I mentioned before in the pre-show, kind of rolling through, if you're able to catch that, I want to know two questions up front. There'll be a few times I ask questions. I like hearing a lot of interaction. We're using a pretty low latency stream, so I should be able to interact with you. Two questions up front. One, where are you watching from? And two, do you currently use in-ears? Let us know in the chat. Vince, Freeport, Illinois, he's using in-ears. Matt, he's an avid in-ears user. Gil, my stepdad's watching from Charlotte. Hey, Gil. Kramer from California. Aiden all the way from Australia. So yeah, lots of great comments. So keep those coming. A couple housekeeping things up front before we get started. This will be recorded. In fact, it's recording right now. I'm watching it on the screen. It is working. It's recording. If you need to leave, if you need to step out, 7 p.m. Central for me. So I already had dinner. You may be about to head into dinner or you're about to go watch a show or something, depending on your time zone. Or Aiden, what time is it for you? He's over all the way in Australia. Who knows what time? It's probably tomorrow for him at this point, early in the morning. But if you need to leave, do not worry. It's going to be recorded. It is recorded. you'll get a link to that recording afterwards. You'll also get my outline, so that the actual notes that I'm using, the links that I reference, I want to send you my outline so you can follow along. You don't need to try to Google tons and tons of links while things are going. So I'm going to send that to you. Best of all, for all of this, Allclair is providing a discount for you that you will get in the email. Now, it's important, in order to get the link to the replay, in order to get my outline, in order to get that discount, you need to make sure you are registered. So what I mean is this. So let me actually copy this link here. If you guys are watching on YouTube and you happen to get here through social or some other means, make sure you head here, and let's post the link in the comments. Register here. And as long as you are registered using that link, then you're going to get the email first thing tomorrow morning. So if you need to leave, you'll get my the replay, my outline, and the discount in your email. But you need to make sure that you have registered using that link there. Now, we also have a live chat going right now. If you don't see that and you're watching on from studiostage.com/live, then make sure that you go over and click this button here. Oh, this is kind of meta. Make sure you click watch on YouTube, and that's going to take you over to YouTube where you can see the comments and you can and chat along with us. So this is going to be a lot of fun. An alternate way to get to the link to register is go to fromstudiostage.com/live. And again, as you saw here, you can click register for webinar. So whether you're watching on fromstudiostage.com/live or YouTube, glad you are here. Really, really thankful that you are here. I know it means a lot to, let's come back. There we go. I know it means a lot to take time out of your day to join us for this. Means a lot to me, means a lot to Allclair. Let's get started. So here's what we want to do. The goal of this webinar, really, if I boil it down to one sentence, is I want to help you choose the right in-ears, no matter your budget, no matter what you play. Okay. So the way I'm going to do this is really try to do this by answering two main questions. So one, why should you use in-ears, right? Just in general, why should you use in-ears? And then how do you choose the right in-ears? And again, as I mentioned kind of in the pre-roll here, if you didn't catch that, this webinar is sponsored by Allclair, but this is not an Allclair sales pitch. So the principles, the things I'm going to talk about apply no matter what brand in-ears you're considering or that you've already chosen, or if you're moving from something. So why should you use in-ears? How do you choose the right in-ears? So before we even get into this, I don't know the skill level of you. I don't know what you're using. It looks like most people here are using in-ears, right? It's a couple of people are using universals, a couple of people are using customs, but you may be on this call and going, okay, I'll buy, what are in-ears? So let's just start very basic, fundamental level and talk about what in-ears are. I think that's really important. Whenever we get in a conversation like this, it's important to make sure we're all clear on what the heck we're talking about, right? So let's start there real quick. What are in-ears? So in-ears are these things that go in your ears, right? I'm wearing them right now. There you see. These are my brand new Allclair in-ears, but they are things that go in your ear that help you monitor. So they're kind of similar to headphones. We'll talk about that. Here's a video Allclair has, but you can see they literally go in your in-ears. Hence the name in-ears, right? They go in your ears so that you can hear. People use them for monitoring in a studio situation. Someone earlier, who was that? Let's see if I can find their name. Yeah, Richard. Hey, Richard. Glad you're here. Richard said he uses it primarily for samples. So people use it in the studio for mixing. You can use it for all sorts of things, mixing front of house monitors. But one of the main primary purposes that people use in-ears for is for on stage, for monitoring, listening to their sound as a musician. So that's what in-ears are. Now, why in the world would you ever use in-ears? Why would you subject yourself to plugging these things into your ears? What's the biggest benefit for you? One, the very first thing I think of is just you get your own personal mix, right? This is a big one for me. Let me know what's the biggest benefit for you. I'm going to run through a few of them. Let me know in the comments if you're watching what the biggest benefit of using in-ears for you personally is. What's the thing that's changed for you? For me, it's having a personal mix. I remember the days of having floor wedges And it's watching singers, three singers share one floor wedge, right? And if you're in a situation where you're trying to blend, you're doing 3-part harmonies. If you still do that in your band, it's really difficult to make that happen because you always have people competing for, I need more of me, I need less of me. If you're a guitar player, for me, I'm typically other side of the stage from the drummer, trying to hear the drummer and trying to lock into the drummer. It's really, really difficult. For me as a guitar player, not only do I get that personal mix, but it allows me to finally be able to crank my amp up, right? I can move my amp off stage, get it as loud as I want to, and get my own personal mix. I don't have to turn my amp down for the sake of making it work for everyone else, which is really, really nice. Saves my hearing, lower stage volume. I think they saw my notes here. I think they cheated and saw my notes. Conrad says, I play bass, having in-ears helps me really pick out the low end with the bass response around my ear. Yeah. Vince says best possible sound. We have a small church, so wedges would be terrible. All the slap bag. Yes. Vince loves in-ear monitors. So, I Play With Sticks mentioned this. Again, I think they cheated and they saw my notes. So one of the other great benefits, personal mix. Like Conrad said, you can hear, if you're a bass player, you can actually hear the bass parts, but it allows you to lower the stage volume. Now, if you're in a small stage setting, church setting like this, we go to a lot of links to try to lower stage volume, right? If you're watching, got a drum shield in front of electronic drum set. One of my favorite pictures of all times, in attempt to lower stage volume. But very practically, what it allows you to do is get rid of these guys. So this is just El Stocco picture that I found here. And it takes these guys away, right? Those are our floor wedges there. Let's get rid of this picture of me so you can see that. Now, the downside to using in-ears, I guess, is when you lose the wedges, you can't prop your foot up on it and rock out. So maybe there's space somewhere in here for a company to come in and make fake floor wedges, much like people have made fake grand piano shells as we've eliminated grand pianos on stage. Maybe we need a company that's going to make some fake wedges for us to put our feet on to rock out to, right? But it gives me a personal mix. That's a big benefit to me. Lower stage volume. Again, going back to guitar amps, I can move my amp off stage, crank it up, finally hear my amp for once, which is really, really good. Lower stage volume. Again, someone here mentioned protecting their hearing. That's a big one to me, because as we move the wedges off stage, then we put in-ears in, and if we're using custom in-ears, we'll talk about what that means, what that is in a second. It's going to cut the extra sound out, so we can lower the stage volume, just what we're hearing, so we don't have all the sound blaring at us. It's going to isolate that sound, but then it's going to allow us to actually turn this down, right? So that's one of the big benefits of using custom in-ears. I'm getting ahead of my outline. We'll get there in a moment. But using in-ears cuts that volume down, protects our hearing by allowing us to actually turn this down, which is great. The other thing for me, and this, you may disagree with this may be slightly controversial, but to me, it makes you a better musician, right? And the reason I think it makes you a better musician is you have to listen. You're forced, to actually, if you're a guitar player, you're forced to actually hear your guitar player, hear your amp for the first time, right? I remember the first time as a guitar player, I mic'd my amp and I hit a chord and I went, oh my gosh, that's awful. The sound guy's, he's an idiot. What is he doing? And then I realized I've always heard my amp from about 2 to 3 feet high, right? I've never actually put my ear next to the speaker and listened. So that makes a big difference. It makes you a better musician because, one, it's going to give you better tone as a guitar player, right? You're going to have the best tone you've ever had if you can kind of dig into in-ears and commit to in-ears as a guitar player. It's going to be really beneficial. It's going to force you as a bass player to really listen to the drummer, listen to what the kick pattern is doing. So it said, and at the same time you hear all the mistakes for you and your fellow musicians, which is always fun. So I'm right there with you. It definitely highlights everything. As a buddy of mine once said, it's like standing on the beach in a Speedo, right? Everything is bare for the world to hear. So it makes you a better musician because you're listening. The other thing you can do, and again, might be slightly controversial depending on the style of music you play, you can play with a click, right? That opens up the possibilities to play with a click, gives you better transitions by using in-ears, playing with a click. I did a article for Sweetwater. Let's see if I can paste this over here in the notes. Again, if you're watching and need to run, you'll get a replay afterwards as long as you are registered. And then I'm also going to send you my outline that has a bunch of links. So I'm going to post this link here. I did an article for Sweetwater that stirred up some good conversation over on Facebook. I just put that in the comments there for you guys. Stirred up some good conversation on Facebook and Chatter about the benefit of playing with a click. But again, that's another one for me, is the ability to play with a click, which I think is great. So let's see. We got, had some great comments. People says, we have stage boxes since we don't have wedges. There you go. So someone is making that happen. Let's see. Yeah. So again, those are some of the benefits to me. Just a few. Having your own personal mix, lowering stage volume, protecting your hearing, again, making you a better musician, listening to everything everyone plays, which is both good and bad, and then gives you the ability to use click. But okay, we've talked about in-ears, but why could you not stand on stage and just wear headphones like this? What's the benefit of in-ears over headphones? One, let's talk, this is maybe the most vain thing, but let's talk personal or visual appearance, right? If you're on stage wearing headphones, that looks very much like you're not in the moment playing. You're not, in with the band. You're in this kind of isolated experience. Now, that is, of course, unless you're Darren King of Mute Math. That's part of his shtick, right? Previously of Mute Math, formerly of Mute Math, rather. That's part of his thing, so he can get away with wearing headphones. If you're in a situation where you are on camera a lot, this is probably another thing to be aware of. And again, it's very vain. I understand that. But you can see, even for me, you can barely tell I'm wearing in-ears. And if I was smart and had hid this cable, you barely would be able to even see those in my ears, which is great. So the visual benefit is really, really huge there. The other thing, the difference between headphones and in-ears for me, again, they're more discreet. You can do that, but it also blocks out the outside sound. Again, we talked about that idea of lowering stage volume, right? And part of lowering stage volume is getting rid of those wedges that are blaring at you, so we can bring this level down, which is going to help protect hearing. But when I use custom in-ears and even some universal in-ears, I have a pair of the All Clear. I think they're Curve Universals. They don't currently sell them, but they're great universal in-ears. And even just with those, they isolate a lot of the sound as well too. But going to customs is going to isolate that sound, and it's going to do a better job than headphones. Now, headphones get around that by doing noise canceling stuff, right? You see people, if you fly on an airplane, a lot of times they'll have headphones on that cancel out the noise. You do not want to do that on stage. That is not a good idea. Now, you may be asking, again, if you're a beginner here, one of the questions I asked when I first got started is, why can I not just use the headphones that came with my iPhone, right? Why can I not use the ear pods that came with it? My buddy Andrew, I did an Instagram live before this, and he jokingly said, AirPods sound the best for bass, and he's obviously just kidding. But why can you not use just iPhone earbuds on stage? Well, again, one, they're not tuned for live performance. They're tuned for listening. So they're going to accentuate certain frequencies, and they're going to hide other frequencies. They're not giving you a good reference. They're kind of sweetening the sound. Now, when you're listening to music, that might be what you want. That might be a good approach, is you want the sound sweetened slightly, right? But then the other thing, other big thing like we talked about, is they don't block out the outside sound. And they also don't give you tons of headroom. So you start to turn them up and they start to distort, right? So because they don't block, you have to turn them louder, and then you get them so loud that they start to distort and they're not clear, which then ruins your hearing. So you defeat the whole purpose, right? You didn't pay attention to the webinar if you're going and using earpods or headphones that came with your phone to make that happen. Now, again, some headphones are going to do a little better job at isolating stuff. Again, not everything is like that. But that's kind of the main thing. So I'd encourage you to look at using some type of in-ear, preferably custom. Again, we'll talk about what that means here in just a moment. But that's going to help save your hearing. It's going to give you a better experience. Everyone that's using in-ears already, basically in the chat here, is saying we use it all the time. Someone here said, my band is very tracks heavy. With all of us being on ears, it makes the dynamics a lot better without counting every song. Yeah, even if you're not tracks heavy, I think using in-ears opens up the possibility to use click, which allows you to do really smooth transitions. And if you're using tracks, 100%, it's a essential thing that you need. So Again, how do we choose the right pair of in-ears? Kind of two main questions that we need to answer when we're thinking about this, and we're trying to decide on what in-ears do we use. One, do we get custom or universal? And then how many drivers? Those are really the two. That's really all that's left in the webinar. We're just going to talk about those two questions: custom or universal, and how many drivers. So one, let me know in the comments, are you using custom in-ears or are you using universals currently? I saw a couple people up here. Someone said they were using universals earlier in the comments, but let me know, are you using customs or universals? So what's the difference here? So when we talk about universal in-ears, they're in-ears that have replaceable tips, right? You put them in your ear. They're not made just for you. You can get extra foamies and share them with friends, which you should not do. That's really gross. But you could, right? You grab a pair, pull the tips that were on them and replace them with something new, pop them into your ears. Now, if you're using foamies like the ones that come with the All Clear Curve Universals, or Comply Tips is a brand that makes those, you can kind of squish them and stick them and they'll expand, right? Which helps. Let's see, 1, 2, looks like 3 of the 4 people that replied said they're using universals. Again, I had a pair of universal All Clear Curves that I used up until I got these, and they worked really, really well. Another person said they're using universals. And someone says they're using some custom in-ears. But universals are great because they typically are low in price, right? They can be shared amongst a team. If you're at a church in a worship setting, you can share them with a team. Again, that's very gross. I do not suggest doing that, but you could if you had to. But the benefit of customs is that the benefit of universals is they could be shared. They're lower in price, right? Now, the nice thing with custom in-ears though, is custom in-ears are made just for you, right? So when you get a pair of custom in-ears, they are created just for you. They're personalized just for you. Now, in general, what this means is they're probably going to seal the sound and isolate you from the rest of the sound maybe a little better than universals. Again, like I said, I've used some universals that sealed the outside sound, isolated me from the outside sound pretty well. But customs are going to be personalized to you, personalized to your ear, so that you get a unique experience, right? They're going to seal a little better. They're going to be personalized for you. I know multiple friends that that have had their in-ears stolen out of their car, and it's kind of like, all right, joke's on you because they're custom, so you literally can't use them or do anything with them. But custom in-ears are great, personalized for you. They help seal out the sound a little bit. Conrad says custom are great for extended wear. Yeah, that's right. If they are made for you, they're made to be comfortable in your ear. I don't know if that changes by brand or type of material. I know All Clear makes a lot of the material that audiologists use for impressions. I know they mentioned that on their site, but I don't know if, by different brands if they feel more comfortable or not. But I do know getting that fit right and that impression right is very, very important. I had a buddy that just got some in-ears that has to go get them refit because the audiologist kind of screwed something up. So they have to get them redone. These fit perfectly for me. So when we're talking about custom in-ears, again, probably 4 or 5 people in the comments said they're using universal. So you may not be aware of that exact process. So what I thought we would do is kind of talk through this for a second. What I did is I actually, this is me, as you can tell, or someone who looks just like me. This is me at the Audiologist about, probably 2 months ago, walking through this process. So the first step that I needed to do was find an audiologist. I found someone here in Austin. What's great is if you're getting in-ears through All Clear can help you find an audiologist in your area. So they have this little form here that you can go and send to your audiologist with instructions. And once I found an audiologist, so this is what that form looks like here. There you go. And it gives them instructions on how to make impressions and what to do, which is great. But so this is kind of what happened. So first she inspected my ears, make sure everything looked good. She said I had very clean ears, which was surprising, but thank you. I appreciate the compliment. And then she shoved this little cotton deal down on my ears to basically protect, I guess, the canal or the kind of lower bit of my ear. And then the next part is probably the most fun part and kind of weird, is she takes this kind of goo junk and basically you can see it there. Put the bite block in so that, especially as a singer, as you open your mouth, your ears don't move and feel weird. So even for me, as I awkwardly now open and close my mouth, my in-ears stay in just fine and they don't pop out. But then she just literally shoots this goo in your ears. Now, for me, I was kind of worried about that maybe potentially hurting. It didn't. I just got over a cold, so there's a little bit of pressure in my ears at first. But basically, they shoot this goo into your ears. And what that's going to do is that's going to form over time in your ears to basically make, it's called getting an impression for a reason. It's going to make an impression of your ears, right? And then, so they do this, and then it's got to sit for a little bit. And let's see if I can fast forward through this so you guys don't have to see me sit here. Well, we'll just let it run and I'll talk for a little bit. So after the goo goes in, you sit for, I think I sat for 5 minutes or so, waiting for it to kind of set, right, and to kind of gel into place. So there you go. See it in the ear with the little dangly strings hanging out. And then in a second, she came in to basically check to make sure it's done. There we go. And then she removes it. And that's what it looks like. So you get the little cotton bit there at the end. That's what the impression looked like. Again, doesn't hurt coming out of your ears, doesn't hurt getting the goo in your ears. And then she just pulls out the other side there. So what you do, again, first is find your audiologist. Again, I'll share this link here just so you guys can see that. If you are getting all clear in-ears, they have instructions for them, which is great. And they basically say, okay, here's what you need to do to go get your in-ears done. Here's the instructions that the audiologist needs to follow. This is the type of fit, right? And then once you get the impressions made, they tell you to then send them off to All Clear, which I did. And then they're going to go and they're going to make the molds custom for you. Now, what's really cool, let me get back over here to my links. Again, this is not meant to be a All Clear promo, but I'll just show you what I like about them is you can go and design your in-ears based on what type and do lots of stuff like colors, artworks, options, upgrades, right? Let them know that in the instructions. You print this off here. And then after you do that, then you're going to get them back. And this is what you end up getting. Let's switch back over here. 1 second. There we go. You get your in-ears and you can enjoy them, listen to them, and have a blast. And so again, that's what I'm using now. I ended up going with the RSM quads, which are 4 drivers. We'll talk about what that is in a second. But they are working, working really, really well for me. But essentially, if you've never done custom in-ears, that's what the process looks like, right? You find your audiologist, you get those impressions made, you get the goo in your ear, and then after you get the impressions made, decide on what in-ears you want, ship them off to the company that's going to make them, and then you get them back and you can enjoy them, which is great. So I would encourage you, a couple people in the comments here are saying, Luis says, my first pair is universal, now I use custom, big difference, I prefer custom. I agree. That's a great point, Luis. So to that first question, universal or custom? Yes, universal is more affordable. It's cheaper, but custom is going to be personalized for you. It's going to isolate a little more. It's going to allow you to wear them longer without your ears hurting after a couple hours of wear. And so I would encourage you, check out and try to go the custom route if possible. So hopefully that helps answer that question. Now, the next question here is how many drivers? Do I get 4 drivers in 4 driver in-ears? Do I get 6 driver in-ears? If I'm a bass player, do I get 2? Do I get 4? Do I get 12? Do I get 70,000 drivers? How many drivers do you need to make this happen? Well, I think before we even answer that, we need to ask the question, what is a driver, right? So what the heck is a driver? This is very, very cheesy, but I thought this is appropriate. This is an example of drivers, but not the drivers we were looking for. So drivers are similar to speakers, right? So speakers, put out sound so that we can hear them. I think we're all aware of what speakers do, but speakers are pretty big. So if we go to shove speakers in our ears, we typically can only fit 1 speaker in our ear, and that's what we get. So we end up using what's called balanced armature drivers. So this is a kind of an example of what this looks like here going in an in-ear. And so they're these tiny little drivers that fit in your in-ears, and they allow you to use multiple drivers in a ear. right? So you can put multiple balanced armature drivers in your ears that are going to do some different specific things. One link I want to share here, let me pull this up and grab this in the comments. All Clear has a couple. What's interesting is I was preparing for this webinar. I found a couple really good articles that I did not know that All Clear had done that really help explain some of this even deeper, and they know even more about what they're talking about than I do. So I linked that up over on YouTube. Again, that'll be in my outline as well too, if you have to run off and want to get that later. But balanced armature drivers are small enough that we can fit them, multiple ones of them, in custom in-ears. Here's an example of a couple balanced armature drivers going in ears. And again, it allows to fit more in a specific space, but it allows you to do specific things and tune them certain ways. So one of the things you have to be aware of and careful of is drivers are not the same. So you can't say, this 2 driver versus this 2 driver is exactly the same. It gives you the exact same experience because drivers are small and they can be custom made and custom created and specified. They're going to be designed for specific uses. So not all drivers are created the same. So what's really good, and I'll show you here in a second, a suggestion on, and I'll show you with some of the All Clear material, but a suggestion on how to decide what amount of drivers are right for you, right? Typically, I'm used to saying, yeah, if you're a bass player, you should use you should use at least dual driver and blah 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 blah. We want to move away from that. I'm going to give you hopefully some better questions to ask when we're looking at that. But it's important to note. Drivers are very small. They allow us to fit multiple ones in our ears, and they are custom created. So we get some really unique kind of combinations. And when people really think of themselves as artisans doing this, they can go, okay, I'm going to put this driver here and this one here to create this kind of overall sound. Now, why do multiple drivers matter? What's the point? What's the purpose of having multiple drivers? As you go up, does it get better, or is there a certain breaking point? I saw an Instagram live where someone said, at least 4 drivers, anything over that's kind of silly. To an extent, I understand what they're saying, but there's a purpose. So why do we have multiple drivers? So let's start here. So this is our metaphorical driver. Okay. It's ugly. It's not great. And then let's talk about representing sound or frequency ranges or frequency, just using 3 terms that we're all very, very familiar with, right? Bass, mid, and high. So when we have one driver, we have one speaker, then that driver is trying to do the job of representing those 3 frequencies at the same time. Now, there's going to be some trade-offs that happen, by trying to get those 3 frequencies on that one speaker. Now, what's cool though is look what happens as we start to split this out. So if we go from 1 driver to 3 drivers, then now we can say, okay, let's use this 1 driver to really focus on bass frequencies, and let's tune this this second driver to really focus on mid frequencies, and let's tune this 3rd driver to really focus on the high end frequencies, right? So that could be great. 3 drivers, 2 drivers, you could maybe do some combination where we're splitting that and tuning one to really handle a lot of the great low stuff and low mids, and then you get the high stuff on the other. And depending again on that combination and how those are created depends on what they work for. But then we take it a step further. Let's say we do 4 drivers. It's going to allow us to again focus a little more on specific ranges and create a product, create in-ears that are a little more specialized, maybe for a specific purpose. Let's say you add another one in, and again, these are all just very hypothetical and just kind of an example of this. Now we can really separate and go, okay, let's do sub bass and bass, and then low mids, high mids, and highs, right? So the idea here, when we talk about using multiple drivers, the reason we want to go from just a giant speaker in our ears, right? That'd be kind of silly to have a giant speaker. We want to use a balanced armature driver that's going to allow us to get multiple drivers in so that each of those drivers can be tuned to specific frequencies, right? And those specific frequencies are really important based on what instrument we play, right? So we need to make sure that we get a in-ear that is tuned specifically for the instrument we play. Now, if you're an MD or you're a front of house engineer, a monitor engineer, then there's some consideration configurations we'll talk about, and some things we'll talk about here in just a moment. All right. So if you have questions, just a reminder, throw those in the chat at any point. We'll take questions at the end as well here. Also, if you have to run off and leave, just as a reminder, you'll get a replay link, you'll get a link to my outline and a discount specifically for people that have registered from All Clear. In order to get that, you need to make sure you've registered. You can click the link previously in the comments if you're watching on YouTube, or you can head to fromstudiostage.com/live and click the link register for webinar. And you will get an email first thing tomorrow morning that gives you all that info, link to the replay, my outline, and that discount. So, yeah. All right, let's keep going. So we talked about what a driver is. It is not Vin Diesel. We've talked about kind of what they do, why it's beneficial to have multiple ones. But again, let's get back to it. You're a bass player, you're a drummer, you're a guitar player, you're watching this. What in-ears should you get? How many drivers should you get? Again, as I mentioned before, I want to try to move us away from X amount of drivers is best for bass players, X amount of drivers is best for guitar players, because again, like we mentioned, different drivers are created for different purposes and are tuned for different purposes. So if I say get four drivers, and all four of those drivers are tuned for bass, and say that's great for keyboard player, well, then it's not going to be great for anything outside of that bass frequency range. So here's kind of the question I want us to move to. Two questions, really. I want us to move away from X amount of drivers is best for this type and X amount is best for that. And I really want us to try to answer these two questions. One, what is your budget? And then two, how, where will you use them, right? What is your budget? How and where will you use them? So when we talk about the budget bit, the best in-ear is the one that suits your purposes and is within budget, right? If I go to the All Clear site here, let's pull this up, and I look at in-ears, they have a wide range of in-ears. They have a lot of different types of in-ears. But if I look at this, I could go all the way up here to the $1,500 in-ear. That's the best in-ear, right? Well, not necessarily. If your budget is $500 or less, you should not even consider this pair of in-ears, right? And All Clear will tell you that in some of the articles I linked earlier. So we need to decide, okay, what's our budget? Let's say we're sub $500, okay? Then we know, okay, this is the range we're looking at. We're looking at the Tour triple driver, reference triple driver, dual driver, dual driver, Versa dual driver, right? So now we know we're in this budget range where we can go anywhere sub $500. Now the next thing we need to go, again, if we go back to that question, what's our second question? How and where will you use them? And what do I mean by this? Practically, are you going to use these to mix audio, right? Are you going to be in a studio mixing audio? Are you going to be a front of house engineer where you're going to be mixing audio at front of house? Or are you in a band situation where you're going to be performing on stage? If you're on stage, are you typically on giant stages, small stages? We really want to think about the purpose of where and how we're using these in-ears. And then again, if you're a musician, and by the look of the comments, most people here are musicians that are performing on stage with their instrument using in-ears, and we need to think, okay, what instrument are we using? And we need to find in-ears that are tuned specifically for that instrument. So let's take bass for a moment. Okay, so when I'm talking about bass and I'm talking about in-ears, again, I need to think, okay, I need to find an in-ear that has enough drivers, that those drivers are tuned to really not accentuate, but to make sure that it really represents the low end really well. I need to look for in-ears that are going to give me plenty of headroom, so that as I turn up the bass, again, I get a lot of clarity before I hit distortion. Now that becomes even more important if I'm playing right next to a drummer that's going to be super loud. One, it's important that I get those custom in-ears, right, to seal out the sound of the drums so that I don't have to turn my ears up so loud. But then again, because I'm dealing with that low end, I need something that I can turn up enough, get enough clarity before distortion, which is headroom, so that my in-ears represent that really well. So if we just kind of put this practically here, Excuse me. So I'm going to go, and again, let's say my budget, and this is just completely on the cuff. Andy's probably going to go, no, Will, that's not the right in-ear that you should pick. But we're going to say our budget's less than $500. And I know, okay, I'm counting all these out because they're over $500. So I'm just going to start looking at these. And here's kind of the thing that I would suggest. You'll notice and see on Auclair's website, and I think most in-ear companies, I imagine most in-ear companies have something like this. I really like the way Auclair kind of demonstrates this. They have a graph like the one that you see here. And let me pull this up a little bigger. And what this graph does, and what this purpose of this graph is doing, let's take me out of the picture there so you can see, is it's going to try to show you some sort of representation of what the sound of these in-ears are like, right? It's going to tell you how well does it handle sub bass and bass, how well does it handle highs, upper mids, mid-range, those sorts of things. What I really like about, and again, this is not meant to be an Auclair pitch, but what I really like about the Auclair site and the way that it's laid out here is they're going to give you some commentary on this. They're going to give you this ideal for, and based on the different types of musicians, based on the different types of roles, it's going to tell you what it works well for and what it doesn't. So again, the Versa doesn't have the depth of customization options of other custom in-ears. Designed to be simple. It's clear shells, so you can't go and customize and get all the fancy stuff. If that doesn't matter to you, this is a great option. It's designed to be simple. The next step up for musicians would be the dual XP driver. For audiophiles, check out the reference triple driver, right? Typical uses, musicians and music listeners will be drawn to the versatility. Music listeners find the Versa exceptional listening monitor that does not fatigue. Keyboard players, guitar players, especially acoustic, will appreciate the overall balance. And so again, this is really affordable. So this is probably a great place to start. But if we go and click through here, and let's say, okay, we want the customization options here. All right, so then we're going to move up to the dual XB dual driver. And that's going to give us those customization options that we didn't get in the cheaper one. Now it's going to add, let's see, what did it add? $50. So again, maybe that's a good solution for you if you want to be able to customize. And again, you see kind of the frequency range here. And I have a couple diagrams. I'll show that bigger. But it's going to show you, it works great for bass players, guitar players, drummers, less aggressive high end, makes it great music listening as well. But you can see they're saying it's not the best solution for keys players, front of house, or large or loud stages and hi-fi situations. So if you're one of the people that it said it's not great for, then what you can do again within that range is click around and go, okay, this is great for vocalists, small, medium stages, large and loud stages. But you could see they basically have isolated most of the instruments from this. So they do a really good job of telling you what this is great for. And you can see because it accentuates the upper mids and the mids, it's great for vocals. So here's kind of what we're going to do, right? Again, we want to reference, if the company that you're buying in-ears from has some sort of reference here, we want to reference these diagrams and say, okay, what are the frequencies that these in-ears are going to represent? Right? And then we want to make sure we find something that works great for us. So this is the reference for the tours. You can see the bass is slightly accentuated, the upper mids, or represents that better. Here's the RSM dual drivers, RSM2. That's a representation for it. But again, what we want to do is go and figure out, okay, what drivers are tuned for our specific instrument or type of instruments, what drivers work best for our scenario, again, whether we're front of house, whether we're in the studio, whether we're on the stage doing this, and if we're a bass player, find something that represents the low end really, really well. Find something that represents high end well. Now, let me speak for a moment. What if you're in the position of the MD? So we kind of briefly talked about the MD. What if you're in the position of the MD where you really need to hear everyone, right? You need to hear every part that's playing. You need to hear the every type of instrument. So you need something that's really well balanced, something that's going to cover all those frequency ranges really, really well. And so what you could do is go through and again, check out the Auclair site, check out the website. for whatever in-ear company you're buying your ears from, and just go through and look at those frequency ranges and try to find something that kind of represents everything really, really well. Right. So for me, I think looking at that, I believe it was the dual XB driver, kind of gives us, nope, that's not the one I was looking for. Maybe it was the reference triple driver. It kind of gives us that flat EQ range that's going to allow us to kind of represent everything pretty well. That's going to work. Yeah, lots of great options. So even just the Versa dual driver, $250 could be a really good solution just as a way to get started, right? That's going to allow you to kind of hear everything across the board. So again, if we go back to this, the two questions I want you to start answering and looking at and thinking about when we talk about in-ears and going to custom in-ears is, what is your budget and how and where will you use them? And again, choose something that's in budget. More money doesn't necessarily equal better. If it's not the best solution for you, again, it doesn't matter how much it costs. If it's not within your budget, then it's not the best solution for you. Choose something durable, especially if you're going to be on stage. Also, just kind of random side note, consider universals or another pair of in-ears for backup. Right, the best case for you, instead of buying a really, really nice pair, maybe get two Versa dual drivers, $250 a piece, so you have a backup. If you were a touring musician and your in-ears go down, you're toast. So don't get mad at them if you drop them and they break and they shatter. You need to have a backup. So potentially consider universals or an extra pair to help kind of as backup there, which might help. All right, so a couple thoughts here as we wrap up. Again, if you guys have any questions, if you're watching live, post them in the chat over on YouTube. Again, make sure that you have registered from studiostage.com/live is probably the easiest way to get there. Also posted a link if you're watching over on YouTube where you can click through and register for that. Tomorrow morning, you'll get the replay link, you'll get the link to my outline, and you'll get the discount from All Clear specifically just for people that have registered. So make sure you do that before we sign off and get off the call. So again, the three things I want you to think about here at the end: choose something that's in your budget, choose something durable, especially if you're going to be on stage, consider some sort of backup, and then three, reference the EQ and frequency ranges for your in-ears to find something that supports your instrumentation, supports the use that you're doing. Again, don't just think more drivers equals better, therefore I'm going to get the most possible drivers. If you have the money, great, go for it. But even in that case, make sure that that specifically works for your use case and what you're doing. And again, I love how All Clear has laid that out on their site to kind of walk through all those different in-ears, which is great. So that's really it. That's all I've got. We're going to end here in just a couple moments. Again, I'm going to hang out. If you guys have any questions, post those in the chat if you do. But this is, hopefully this was a beneficial webinar for you. Again, trying to answer just those two really basic questions. Why should you use in-ears? And then two, what in-ears should you choose? Really practically, what in-ears should I choose? So if you guys have questions, post those in the chat afterwards, or if you're watching after the fact and have questions, just shoot me an email, will@fromstudiotostage.com. Be more than happy to answer those. If I can't answer, I'll send them along to All Clear, send them to my buddy Andy, who definitely 100% will be able to answer those. So I think that's it. I'm not seeing any questions come in. Thank you guys so much for being here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to leave the stream up for a couple minutes. And again, if you guys have questions, post them in the chat. Make sure you've registered from studiostage.com/live so that you get that email tomorrow. And thank you guys for watching. Thanks so much for being a part of the webinar. We have a couple more webinars that we're going to be talking about after the first of the year that I'm doing with All Clear. And a few more specifically on in-ears and monitoring, which I think are going to be really, really beneficial. So stay tuned to all my social media channels from Studio Stage. We'll dog it, all that fun stuff. But thank you guys so much for being a part of tonight. Thanks for watching. If I don't see you before, then have a happy Christmas. Enjoy the time with your family, and I will talk to you guys later. Take care, everybody. Bye.